All right, I'm just gonna jump right into this game because this was probably the best offensive game I have seen in a long time. Trubisky has had 5 touchdown games, but those were against like bad teams, bad defenses. Um, Justin Fields is the guy. I don't want to hear anything other than he is the guy. If you, and I know you didn't watch it, you didn't watch the game. You're too busy with your team. Uh, but Justin Fields went 17 for 28 passing with 123 yards. Not anything to brag about, but he had 178 rushing yards, most of those on third down. And those 178 rushing yards, the most rushing yards by an NFL quarterback in a single game in NFL history. 4 total touchdowns. This man is the most dangerous man on the field, maybe more than Lamar Jackson. Once he gets set in this offense and he gets an actual receiving core around him and a decent offensive line, this guy will fall. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I don't. I mean, dude, yeah, it's hard to deny that he's a baller. I mean, straight up. I don't necessarily know if like even if he gets a better receiving core, which they already have. I mean, you could argue a decent receiving core. I don't think it's as overhyped as some people are talking about, but it's decent. I don't know if he's ever really necessarily going to be the guy to tear it up with 200 plus 300 plus yard games. I think the better what the wide receiving core is, clearly that's just overall always going to be better. But I don't know, man. I mean, Fields seems like the type of guy where it's like, hey, if he can throw, then he'll throw. But if not, screw it. Might as well run. I mean, sometimes it's a knock on players. He just broke the NFL rushing record for a quarterback. So clearly that's a big part of his game, and he's going to utilize that.
And when you watch him play, okay, first off, I want to credit the offensive line. And I was starting to write down my notes for the episode with 4 minutes left to go in the game. I wrote down 0 sacks, and then right as I wrote that down, I look up and Justin Fields gets sacked. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll scratch that off. But coming from an offensive line that had, 6 sacks a game almost, our offensive line looks tremendously better. Cole Kmet had 2 touchdown catches. This man had 0 touchdowns all last year, and now he's had 3 in the last 2 games. So it's nice to know that our offense is finally kind of cooking now. I don't recognize this offense. I've never seen a Bears offense look like this. We're playing to our quarterback strengths and we're actually moving down the field. I remember a couple years ago, I was like, oh my God, we got a first down. Like that was exciting to me. Now I'm like, oh my God, we scored. Just it's incredible how far we've come in such a short time, I guess. Because 2 years ago, go ahead.
Well, sorry to interrupt. The only thing I'm curious about, because I know I mean, this right here is probably the most ideal outcome that you could have for a Bears game.
Oh
Fields
yeah.
goes nuts, you guys lose, it helps your tanking, yada yada yada. I guess the question that I have as a guy who's not used to watching his team tank is, does it bother you that in a game where Fields literally sets a record and looks incredible and is doing everything humanly possible, you guys still fall short?
It doesn't bother me, but I do worry that Justin Fields it'll start to get in his head because this guy balled out and we 35 to 32. We went step for step with one of the best, the most explosive offenses in the NFL, and we were step for step with them. If it wasn't for a blocked punt that turned into a touchdown, we might have won that game. And I know that that's kind of like a what if, and that happened in the second quarter, but yeah, like I said, we went step for step with one of the most explosive offenses in the league, and Justin Fields played his ass off. Now I'll skip forward to the very end because, like you said, does it worry me that Justin Fields is balling and we're still losing? It doesn't worry me because Justin Fields wasn't the reason why we lost. We had the ball in the final 2 minutes of the game, and Justin Field, we ran it twice, got 0 yards, 0 net yards, and then we took a deep shot to Chase Claypool, and would have gotten in field goal range to tie it at the most. But there was another missed defensive pass interference where the guy literally was grabbing, like almost tackling him before the ball got there. That wasn't called, and the fans and myself were outraged. But shit happens. Like I said, the refs are never wrong. So that brought up 4th and 10. Call pass play. We find Dante Pettis wide open, not wide open, but open for a first down. Justin Fields rolls to his right, throws it, goes right through his hands, ending the game. There was no the DB was close. There was, there was no interference. There was no hand fighting. It just went right through his hands. So that would, like I said, that's the best way for this game to end. Justin Fields setting records. Justin Fields playing his ass off and scoring 32 points and still losing, not because of him, though. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, totally.
Defensively, they were about as I expected. We were outmatched in every level of the game. Front seven, linebackers, secondary. Our secondary is really our strength, but we're really young. There are 2 rookies in the secondary going up against, like I said, one of the most explosive wide receiving cores in the NFL. So, of course, there were going to be wide open Tyreek Hill and wide open Jalen Waddle and everything. So I kind of expected that. But they came in clutch late. The entire defense came in clutch. 2 back-to-back 4th down stops to put their offense back on the field and keep them in the game. Like, yeah, they gave up 35 points, but it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And they finished very well. And I'm proud of them for having, we don't have Roquan Smith, we don't have Robert Quinn. We're basically putting like Jack Sanborn, who was one of our undrafted rookie free agents, who was a big name in the preseason, was starting at middle linebacker, and wasn't watching him all game, but for an undrafted rookie free agent, did really well in his first start. Other than that, defense played okay, considering.
So a question about that. Now that Fields kind of seems like he's, spreading his wings and flying, so to speak, does it make you upset that your rebuild efforts are probably going to be shifted more towards your defense now, rather than trying to maybe tool up with a good draft pick for Fields? Because I imagine with this defense, you guys getting rid of Robert Quinn and Roquan Smith, you guys are going to be looking to beef this defense up if you're going to be legitimate contenders. Because, Fields is good, but can you really keep up with the pace that the other teams are going to be scoring?
Yeah. So that's a big concern. Yeah. So you look ahead at free agency and you look at the receivers that are going to be in free agency. And when you look at it, there are a bunch of just, crap, lower tier athletes on the free agents that are set to hit free agency. I think Juju Smith-Schuster might be the best free agent wide receiver coming up. I don't really know who's hitting free agency in the offensive line market, but I feel like that's where we'll probably target. We'll probably go after a wide receiver or 2, but it won't be we're not gonna fix the position in free agency for getting wide receivers.
Well, and 2, sorry to interrupt. I also wonder, I guess, how much of a move the Bears truly feel like getting Claypool is. I wonder if the Bears are looking at that as like, hey, this is going to be a nice complementary piece to an ultimately much better wide receiving core, or if maybe in their minds that's like hey, this is our big move. This is going to be our number 1 guy. Maybe let's try to focus on some other stuff now.
It's hard to tell because Claypool was on a snap count. I think he got maybe 10 or 15, maybe 20 plays. He had a few catches, I think 3 or 4 for maybe 20 or 30 yards. A lot of it was either he was downfield he drew 1 pass interference call, which is more than any other receiver has done this year for Chicago. And then he had the 1 other deep pass late in the game that should have been called for defensive pass interference. Other than that, he had 2 or 3 catches for maybe 20 yards. So it's hard to say after that game because he wasn't out there. He wasn't a vital part of the offense because he doesn't know the offense yet. So going back to your original question of focusing on defense, I expect the Bears to have a top 5 or top 10 draft pick, kind of like Green Bay.
Yeah. Watch out. For you.
Yeah. I haven't really focused a lot on the draft this year because it's week 9, week 10. So there's no reason for me to look at the draft right now. but from what I've heard, there's a lot of solid defensive linemen. I know Jalen Carter and Brian Breeze, I think, are some of the top defensive tackles, and Michael Murphy, I think, is a defensive end. I'm not sure where Murphy's out of, but um, with how many teams they're probably gonna be trading up to get a quarterback or wide receiver, I think some of those defensive players are gonna slip through and fall to the late the low teens or the late single digits. And that's where we'll pick up, a Michael Murphy or a Brian Breeze or something like that. So yeah, I wouldn't be upset if we took a defensive tackle because that is a major need right now. That was a long-winded way of saying, yeah, let's take a defensive player in the first round. Chicago plays Detroit at home next week, noon game. Detroit's coming off a big win, but like you said in the Packers video, the Packers always struggle against Detroit. Chicago hasn't really struggled. I think, bad teams play up to their opponents sometimes, and sometimes better opponents look past the worst opponents.
Well,
So
especially the Packers. Everybody in the NFC North always tries to play up against the Packers. Let's be real here.
so I think this will be one that Chicago actually takes. With and I just want to make it known that I don't think that Justin Fields will play this good every week. I think he's had a good, almost great stretch of 3 games, but that's bound to end at one point. I can kind of see it ending this week because the Lions are a 2-win team, and I know we're a 3-win team, but still, like, it's Detroit, so you're gonna look past them, or you might look past them. Um, I think I'm still gonna take Chicago just because like our offense seems to be clicking better, and I think we're better coached. Nothing against Dan Campbell. I love the dude. If there were a coach I would play for, it would definitely be Dan Campbell at the top of that list. But I just think our coaching staff will probably outperform their coaching staff, and I'll take a win by 7, I think.
I also think the Bears are going to win, and I think the Lions defense. I think they're giving up the most points in the league. Um, Honestly, the only reason why the Packers scored so little is because of how bad we are on offense.
Mhm.
So I think with the way that the Bears have been playing recently, I think they're probably going to put up a lot of points. I would expect the Bears to probably put up 30 points at least on the Lions. That's what the Lions have been averaging. It seems like that's what the Bears are kind of starting to average as well. Um, so yeah, I mean, I actually think Fields is probably going to maintain his level of play against a defense like this, and I think the Bears will probably win by about 10, 14 points, something like that.
Well, if you like this video and you want to see me praise Chicago and Justin Fields a lot more, I'll definitely be doing that next week. Hit the like, subscribe, and we'll be back next week.
Have fun getting exposed by the Lions.
Oh, like you did, you mean?